I want to add a welcome to our panelists and to our audience tonight, and thank you again for coming here to have this important conversation with us around women and girls in STEM. You soon will meet 5 amazing women who are in STEM fields in all different, levels of their careers. Also, we're going to hear about their successes and maybe some challenges. And I also hope that you have a takeaway that you also learn about STEM opportunities in the field at large, as well as some STEM opportunities in our community. Now, the purpose of tonight really is to support our audience in our thinking about encouraging in your interest and participation of girls and women in STEM in our community. So we'll do this by hearing of these personal learning journeys of our panelists, and also hearing from you. You'll have an opportunity a little bit later on to ask some questions directly of the panelists if you'd like to. In preparation for this evening, the Parent Partnership group sent a survey out to Wakefield Public Schools and citizens. So we had 100 responses from middle school students, from high school students, and also from adults in the community. And we asked a couple of questions to help inform our event tonight. So the first one up there is we see some areas of interest that folks were asked in STEM. And what's curious is there's some similar patterns between middle school and high school as far as the careers that they are interested in. So crime scene investigator got a lot of votes. Surgeon, neuroscience, astronomer, astronaut, as you can see. And if we just go to the next slide, you'll see for high school, it was a lot very similar, which is interesting. Another question that we asked was if you had superpowers, if you could use STEM to change the world or make the world a better place, what did folks say? And here you see Flavia created a Wordle for us. So cancer, curing diseases, climate change, robots were some of the top issues that people were thinking about and would like to see us work hard at. And the last survey question, well, we asked, what was the last one? I can't even remember. No, do we have one more slide about, no? Okay. Well, we did ask, what kinds of questions would you like to ask our panelists tonight? And so what will happen in a minute is I'll have, maybe 2 minutes, I'll have the panelists introduce themselves, and then I'll ask them questions that we have crafted, and then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask some questions as well. At the end of the program, we will have our drawing of our raffle, so hold on to your tickets there, and we'll ask you to complete your survey about the evening at the end before you leave as well. So before I introduce or ask them to introduce themselves, I want our audience members to also think about all of the things that you bring with you being here tonight, you know, with regard to your interest in STEM, and I want to find out a little bit more about who's in the audience. And so some folks think a little bit about what is your STEM or what is your science capital? Sort of what are those life experiences that you have that are, you know, shape the interest in the things that you do? And as you hear and listen to our panelists kind of reflect on their experiences, you might think in the same way, like, okay, so what do I know about science, or what do I know about math? What's the kind of content that I know? That's one little piece of this. Another piece is, well, what do I think of STEM? What do I think of science or math? Am I kind of interested, but I might not want to do it in the future? Are you really interested and you know you want to do that in the future? So how do you even think about these areas? Another thing is, who do you know? In a minute, you're going to meet 5 amazing people who are in the field, but who do you know who is in a STEM career or field? And the last question that I hope that you might reflect on yourself is, so what do you do in STEM right now? What kind of activities do you already participate in or might want to participate in the future? So, audience, you play a very important role in our panel tonight, and I wanted to just ask you a couple of questions. And when I ask this question, just want you to raise your hand if you think you have a positive response to this. So raise your hand, audience, if you can name a book or a movie where a woman is a scientist, a mathematician, an engineer, or a computer scientist. Can you tell us what is it? Hidden Figures. Yeah, that's such an amazing book. Okay. Anyone else have another one? Okay, well, we have some books out there a little bit later on. Maybe you can see. Okay, so raise your hand if you're interested in STEM topics. And yes, this is all audience members. All right, raise your hand if you want to enter a STEM field or major in college. Don't be shy. Okay. Yeah, we have. Okay. All right. How about if you are currently working in a STEM field? Raise your hand. Look around. All right. We're getting to know each other here. Okay. How about raise your hand if you knew at a young age that you were either good at STEM, everybody knows what STEM is, right? Science, technology, engineering, or math. You don't have to be good in all of them. Oh, we got one hand already raised up there. Or that you were passionate about STEM at an early age. Look at this. All right.
I see some missing hands.
How about raise your hand if you know someone in a STEM field? All right. And I have two more questions for you. Raise your hand if you have ever been a mentor to someone who's entering a STEM field or a career. And the last question, can you name one place outside of school that you have learned about STEM or explored STEM? So who wants to tell us one place? Kelly. Museum of Science, okay. All right, that was not a plan. Okay. All right, well, now, panelists, we know a little bit more about our audience, and at this point, I'm excited for you to meet our panelists who are lifelong learners. They're change agents in the community and in the classroom. They're passionate about their vocation. So why don't we start with Senila?
Hi everyone, my name is Senila Yasmin. I actually just graduated from the high school in 2016. I'm now over at BU, a second-year student studying biology. I'm actually specializing in cell bio, molecular bio, and genetics. I'm also a double minor in public health and human physiology. I'm hoping to pursue my dual degree in MD and PH after undergrad, and I'm very excited to be here to represent a female student's voice on the panel. Thanks.
And Senila, I'm sorry, can you just tell us one thing that you're enjoying most about being in college right now?
I think what I like most in college is I'm surrounded by a lot of people in my major who are also just as excited for science as I am. So.
Thank you.
I'm Patti Doren. I'm currently in my third year of teaching at Wakefield High School. I teach computer science and technology. And next year, I'm probably going to add an engineering course. I spent 30 years in the industry, and I wanted to come back and share that with girls in the community and be a role model, girls and boys, and just give back so that I can give more of myself to my community.
And Patti,
And what do you love about your work?
Yep.
Oh, what do I love? Oh my God, I love the kids.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Flavia Pastore. I'm originally from Brazil. I moved to America when I was 15, just same age as my son is today. Both my parents are engineers, which is not very common to have a mother at the age of my mom to be an engineer. She graduated from college in '73, so that was engineering was always something that I thought it would be because I never thought that it wasn't a career that I could be because that's what my mom did, that's what my dad did, that's what I should do. It wasn't until high school that I really got more passionate about STEM. I had some experience in similar classes to what Patty teaches, but they were more robotics classes. I went to high school at Wellesley High, and they had a great program. And I had a great mentor, Mr. Seeger, who has since passed. But he got me excited about robotics. He wrote a book with one of the iRobot founders about robotics. And that's where I work, and that's where I've been for the last 9 years. And what I love most about my job, beyond the people, is the robots. They're kind of cool.
Katie Ann.
All right, hi. I'm Katianne Williams. I'm the digital learning specialist and the media specialist at the Galvin. I just started, so I've only been there for a few months. I have kind of an interesting combination of degrees. I have a bachelor's in computer engineering, but then I also have a master's in fine arts in fiction writing. So I'll kind of combine those two. One of the things that I love to do is write. So I'm a journalist for IEEE's Women in Engineering magazine. And I'm also co-author with Dr. Karen Panetta. She's at Tufts. She was my professor years and years ago. And we co-authored a book called Count Girls In that will come out next summer. And it's a book that explores how parents can raise girls who develop their STEM interests while also remaining true to their authentic selves. Let's see, what do I love about my job? I love that my job really is about helping people, whether teachers or students. I just am astonished by that every day when I get up and go to school. It's been great.
Hi, my name is Sarah Neal, and I am an HR business partner at Shire Pharmaceuticals, and we are a leader in rare diseases, and I find that an intriguing part of my job to be part of a company that can help solve some rare diseases. My favorite part of my job is, as an HR business partner, one of my key roles is coaching the leadership team and developing them. So I deal with, day in, day out, deal with leaders that have the science, technology, and engineering backgrounds and helping them coach them to be the best that they can be in the industry.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes.
I made a plan that I was going to talk about my earrings tonight.
Oh.
And I forgot. My earrings tonight are 3D printed by some girls that are here. And I'm so proud of them for making 3D printed earrings. They have made a whole bunch of fun stuff. But nothing gets me more excited than to get girls and boys interested in STEM. And so I'm wearing these for the net girls right over there.
And they're awesome. That's great. All right, well, we're going to dive right in, and Senila is going to start us off. So as a college sophomore in biology, what got you excited about STEM? What kinds of STEM activities did you enjoy growing up?
It's actually really hard for me to pinpoint what exactly got me interested in STEM, because I feel like since I was young, I've always wanted to pursue STEM. But if I was to kind of go back and trace my steps, I think that I really got interested and really started doing a lot of the science that I like in 7th grade. A lot of science is a lot of pen and paper, but my 7th grade teacher, Mr. Gorski, made it very fun for me. I remember being introduced to topics like anatomy and genetics with a lot more hands-on activities as opposed to just tests and quizzes. Most notably, I remember there was one project where we were given a case study and we basically had to act as a geneticist and solve the case study, and we were doing real-life science, and that really got me interested in science. It really got me hooked. And just the enthusiasm that Mr. Gorski had while teaching the material really, really got me. I really resonated with that. So I continued on with science. I, talked to Mr. Gorski. He was like, how can I get more involved? So he suggested that I participate in the Science Olympiad program over at the middle school. So I started doing that 8th grade and 9th grade. I got to learn a lot more, work with a lot more kids who were also just as excited to pursue science as I was. So I got the opportunity to do that. Once I was in high school, I tried to get a lot more professional experience in the field. I think that's really important. If you're really young, it's kind of hard to know what's out there. So I think the best thing you can do is just go get experience. And, once you're a bit older in high school, that's possible. So I actually, most notably, I shadowed a physician for a couple weeks in the summer through the Teachers and High School Students program through Tufts School of Medicine. So I was able to shadow a physician for a couple weeks and also take a couple medical courses. And that really, that really solidified medicine for me, and that's really how I got interested in medicine.
That's awesome. I agree, Senila, that teachers are rock stars, and Wakefield has many wonderful rock star teachers, and some of them all here tonight. Even going back to my days in high school, the science and math teachers, I have to say, were so strong in junior high. I went to junior high and then into high school. And I know they had a great influence on me moving forward in the things that I've chosen to do. So thank you, Senila. We'll come back to Senila in just a little bit, but we're going to ask our Patti here to talk a little bit about how you go about navigating careers, and the path and the roads that you take might lead you from one thing to the next thing. So, Patti, you started out as a software engineer in the defense industry. And now you're a teacher. So is it ever too late to enter a STEM field, do you think? If you've started on a different path, a different educational path, can you share your journey from computer scientist to what you're currently doing?
Well, I can even go way back. Okay. When I started out, I'm older than all of the panelists. But when I started out, girls weren't encouraged in the STEM fields. So when I went to college, I wanted to go to be a teacher. Girls were either teachers or nurses at that time. So I had dyslexia. I wanted to go and be a teacher of special education. But I struggled with psychology, and I hardly went to my math classes, and I got all A's. So they told me my sophomore year that I couldn't take any more math. I had to take more psychology. And I went, uh-oh, something's wrong with this picture. So I changed my major to secondary education mathematics. When I graduated from college, there weren't any teaching jobs, or if I did get a teaching job, I wasn't guaranteed that I'd have it for the full year. So I went to work as an accounting clerk and drove by this company called the Analytic Sciences Corporation. It's no longer there, but it was called Task, and it was over in Reading. So I said, analytics, mathematics, maybe I could get a job there. Well, I did. I got a job there, and they did defense research work. And on the job, I didn't want to do the calculations on paper and pencil all the time, so I learned how to code. And one of my bosses said, I like you because you're lazy. I said, what do you mean I'm lazy? He says, well, you find the easier way to solve the problems. So I love to solve problems. I spent 30 years in the defense industry, but I always had a passion for teaching. Somebody asked me once while I was in the defense industry doing radar calculations and figuring out why the missile isn't hitting the target, why I stayed there. Well, it was a great place to learn, and I was always learning, so I didn't want to move on. But I always had that passion to teach. So I said to myself as I got older, I'm going to teach when I retire. So I went back to school at an older age. I was the oldest one in class. I got my master's degree, and the job opened up at Wakefield High School. So here I am teaching again. So you know what? I was going to be a special education teacher. I loved math. I followed what I loved, and that's where I am, and it's never too late to enter a STEM field. Just follow your passion.
Well, and as lifelong learners, I think some of us have also had that experience going back to school and maybe looking around you and noticing that not everyone is the same age, but that I think is wonderful. I think that we continue to sometimes get inspired and excited by the experiences that we have. So for me, I kind of missed paleontology and dinosaurs until I started working at the Museum of Science. I was like, hey, wait a minute. We never talked about Earth history or Earth science. And it was when I saw other people and how excited they were that I went, wow, I got to learn more about this. And then I had opportunities to be able to learn more and gain some more experience. So I hear exactly what you're saying.
And you know what? I'm even learning now, because as the students come to me and ask questions, I mean, the STEM field is so vast, computer science is so vast, that I need to learn it with them, not just teach them. So I'm teaching them how to be lifelong learners.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Patti. Flavia. So Flavia has a background, as you heard, robotics engineer, a systems engineer with a mechanical engineering background. So we know that in the STEM fields, women represented about 25% of those STEM jobs. And in the biological sciences, there are quite a few women in those fields, but on the engineering side of things, particularly in mechanical engineering, the number is lower than about 8%. So Flavia, can you tell us a little bit about how you got your start and sort of how did you know that a STEM career was right for you? You talked about your family and maybe the influence there. And now, you know, describing the kind of environment that you work in, maybe a typical day, but I think you're going to say there is no such thing as a typical day. But let's hear a little bit about your work.
Yeah, so from a very young age, I asked my parents this morning, I said, when did I know I wanted to be an engineer? And my parents said, I don't know. I don't remember you not wanting to be an engineer. And then my dad said, I remember one time you didn't want to be an engineer, you wanted to be a teacher. And I said, a teacher? I remember when I was 5, I wanted to be an actress, but a teacher? He said, you were 3. So I've always wanted to be an engineer. But engineer wasn't a concrete thought, right? It was, this is what my mom does, this is what my dad does. I used to go to work with my parents, and I kind of enjoyed the environment that they worked in. And I said, well, that must be something cool to do. When I got to high school, I had a robotics club, and I remember my first year at Wellesley High was very difficult transferring middle high school. The science teacher, Mr. Seeger, said, join the physics club. And I said, I have never taken physics. I can't join the physics club. He said, no, you can. I'll teach you. And so I used to compete in physics before even taking physics. So I knew that math and science was my strong suit. I didn't do quite so well in English. Not that I did terribly English as a second language, but it wasn't like, even when Lucas asked me to help him study with history, not my strong suit. But math and science was. And physics and science and robotics all became like what I like to do. In college, I met my husband in college. We took robotics class together. We had a lot of fun on that too. But that's not where I started. I started working in manufacturing engineer. So if there's 8% women in mechanical engineering, there's probably like 0.1. I don't know what the percentage is. There are not many women manufacturing engineers. I would go to a factory, and people, this young girl, what does she know? And she's a girl, and it took a while, but I've always liked to be challenged. That's what really drives me, is being challenged. So winning people over, Tim will tell you that I would take these big military guys full of tattoos and muscles, and they were grumpy, and I would turn them into putty on my hands. Winning people over, showing them that I know what I'm talking about, helping solve problems, and showing my worth is what really motivates me. So yes, there weren't many women, and yes, it was not very receptive to me as a woman in the very beginning, at least. Once I win them over, I'm just a person. And I used to say, and I still say sometimes, there was one time a guy said, hey guys, come over here, and I gave him a hard time, and I said, guys? And he said, well, you're one of the guys. And that was the happiest day. I said, I'm one of the guys. Like, I'm just one of them. So it's not that I'm not a woman. It's just being comfortable and solving problems and solving challenges is what makes me excited.
That's terrific. I just am imagining, Flavia, where your self-confidence in knowledge of what you were doing, and just being true to yourself and knowing that you can do the work with all of the colleagues and people that you have. So it's terrific. Thank you.
I said the best thing is becoming one of the guys.
Well, after you're one of the guys, you're just an engineer. And then after that, it's like, well, we need this. Like,
Absolutely.
it's been 3 weeks that my boss called me in his office and he said, we have a problem. We're struggling to get this product to the market. I need you on it. It is the #1 priority. I always go to the #1 priority tasks in my company because they trust me. They know what I can deliver. So once you're one of the guys, it's not that you're no longer a girl. You're just an engineer.
You're an engineer. Awesome. And so we're going to ask you in a little bit to tell us a little bit more about a project that you're working on. Katie, so Katie's been able to also combine some of her passions and love in writing and technology. And so, Katie, we wanted to ask you to help us think about why is it important to get more students, including females, interested in STEM? Why do you think many young women are reluctant to consider a STEM field?
Okay, great. Well, STEM is all about solving problems, and STEM people are the doers. They're the people who make things happen and make change. And as we saw on the word cloud earlier, there are many problems that we face today, many challenges in the world, and we need lots of diverse ideas to help us solve them. And studies show that companies really want women because they bring that diversity to the table. If I'm forming a team, I don't want 10 people who all have been coding since they were young and haven't really done too much else. I might want one person at the table like that, but I want a team of people who've been trained in STEM, but also have all sorts of other background interests. Maybe they're into cooking or volunteering or traveling or humanitarian work. Other interests plus STEM is a winning combination. And I'll tell you a story that kind of illustrates that. I interviewed a woman named Margot. Now, Margot went to college in the 70s. She was a physical education major because she was a dancer. And she audited a mechanical engineering course. This was a course in robotics taught by George Becky. He's like one of the fathers of robotics. So she's a dancer, and she's in this course, and she's looking at these robots, and she raises her hand, and she asks the question, why don't they move more gracefully? No one else had thought to ask that question. So she ends up working for him in his lab. And after that, she ends up working at NASA. And she's helping them design robotic arms. Because if you have to have a robot go outside the International Space Station and, try to fix something, you have to have smooth, fluid motions so your nuts and bolts don't go floating off into space. So she combined dance with robotics. And I think sometimes that the reluctance comes from not understanding that this is a pathway, this is a way into STEM. And from believing that there's a specific type of person who is a math and science person and that they're kind of born that way. And that's not always true. So from all the people that I've interviewed over the years, I see kind of two main pathways into STEM. And one of them is Flavia's story, people who knew they really wanted to do this from the time that they were young. And that's really kind of an easier pathway. You just kind of follow along. That's what you want to do. And you just kind of make that happen. But there's another way, and this way seems really particular to so many of the young women that I've talked to over the years. So these women, later on in life, maybe in high school, they might develop like an overarching interest. Like they become interested in the environment or renewable energy or something like that. And then they realize how they can turn that into a career like being a mechanical engineer. So many of you probably wouldn't have thought that you could combine renewable energy and that meant that maybe you could major in mechanical engineering. So you need someone who kind of helps you put that together. So that pathway is a much more kind of challenging way to get interested in STEM. And it takes a lot of luck. And one of the things that I think happens is that we don't always do a really good job of explaining to students what different engineering fields are like and what they really encompass. So I talk to a lot of young students, and I always ask them, like, what do you think a mechanical engineer does? And almost all of them tell me the same thing. A mechanical engineer designs cars. And that's just one thing that they do. But if that's all a student thinks, then, you know, for the 95% of the population that isn't interested in cars, they've kind of crossed that off their list. Mechanical engineers do so many other things. 3D printed hearts, they work for NASA too. There's so many possibilities out there. But you kind of need a teacher or an adult who helps you make those connections. So I think that early on we tend to separate students into the math and science kids and then the other kids. And I think that when we do that, we don't give students like Margot kind of the chance to decide later on in the pathway that they're interested in STEM as well.
Thank you, Katie. I love that you're having all these opportunities and conversations with our younger students.
Can I add a little bit to what you said?
Yes.
So I 100% agree. Like I was thinking tonight, like I'm gonna go tell people my story, and I've always known I wanted to be an engineer. There is a lot of people out there that they don't know, and they find out later in life. They might find out while they're in high school. They might find out even later. But there is one thing that I think a lot of engineers and STEM people have in common. They have a passion about something. And if you follow your passion, you will be successful. So for the young people in the room, just keep that in mind. You might not know what your passion is quite right now, but one day you will find it. And once you follow it, it may lead you into a STEM field or not. But if you follow your passion, you'll be successful.
You know, when I graduated from high school, I didn't even know there was science, technology, and engineering and mathematics for women. You know, I just kind of followed the path of what I was good at and learned it along the way. So, like everybody's saying, follow your passion, follow your love. And I love the story about the woman who was a dancer who got into it. You know, your talents can be applied to many, many, many careers. So just keep an open mind.
Thank you, Patty. We haven't heard yet from Sarah. So, Flavia, you had already mentioned psychology, and maybe that wasn't your passion, but it certainly is something that Sarah was able to dive deep into and using that in your current work. And so, so let's see here. So, Sarah, could you talk a little bit about kind of the role of a mentor? And or a mentor that you have had, or maybe someone that you've supported in a STEM career, and kind of what are those key characteristics that make a mentor-mentee kind of relationship work?
Sure, absolutely. So I'll start off by telling a little bit of a story. My first mentor came to me in college. I'm not great at math, or I wasn't at the time. But I really, really liked classes with this one particular professor. I just really loved him. He taught great classes, and I learned so much. And then I had to take statistics, which statistics is all math, all day long. But he was really, really good at teaching it, and I loved it. And then he asked me to be a tutor, which I thought, me, tutor? No way. You don't want me to teach tutor because I don't even like math. But I was really good at statistics and analyzing numbers and that aspect of math, which I always thought that wasn't really math. When I thought math, I thought it's like adding, subtracting, all that. But the analysis part, I was really good at. I could comb through data and find that little gem or that little detail and pull that out. And he saw that in me. He saw that I could do that. And he became my mentor, lifelong mentor, actually. My college professor, like 22 years ago, he's one of my best Facebook friends as well. But he, through my entire career, has helped guide me and direct me. I was in my mid-20s when I really didn't know where my career was heading, and I called him up and said, this is with a real phone with, like, you know, it was attached to the wall, those kind of phones. I didn't have email, and I didn't have Facebook that connected me. I actually called him on the phone, and I said, I'm really struggling, I need help. I don't know where my career is leading. And he said, okay, well, you still skiing these days? And I said, yeah. He said, all right, well, I'll meet you at the base of Tuckerman's Ravine on Saturday. I said, okay. And we hiked up to Tuckerman's Ravine, and the entire way, he talked to me about my career choices and where I could lead myself, and remembering back to what I was good at and that analyst work and the psychology classes that I took. And then by the end of the trip, we hiked all the way up, skied all the way back down, and by the end, we solved my problems. We figured out what I was going to do with my career and where I was heading. And he said to me, you know, life is like this mountain that you just hiked up and skied back down. There's a lot of challenges along the way, but you got to have someone beside you that can help coach you through it. And he did, and he has since. That's just one example of a mentor, and I've had several through my career. They don't necessarily have to be in the same field or industry. I would say if you're in high school, your mentor could be a friend of your mom's. A mentor could be an older student. It could be somebody that's, you know, interested in sports and you're interested in science. So I loved Katie's story about having somebody with the diverse backgrounds. You know, I think that's what brings, you know, different new ideas to the table for you. So, you know, making sure that even your mentor has a diverse experience than you have, and, you know, being in human resources as a human resource business partner that I am, I sit at the table with leadership team members, and I may not know everything that they know, but I bring a different perspective. And I think that's required in any field, is to have your different experiences and perspectives on things. So I would encourage you, even at a very young age, is if you see a quality in somebody that you'd aspire to be, if you see a field that you aspire to explore, reach out to them, and don't be afraid to do that, asking them questions. You're at a ripe, wonderful age to ask questions of people that maybe are your parents' age or older than you, to ask them about how they got into their field or what they might like about it, just to gain some perspective on it.
That's amazing, and how fortunate. And I really appreciated how, you know, you just have to be willing to be open to talk to different people and find out what they know and how they might help you think about things in a particular way. So at this point, I just wanted to say that we have a moment if we wanted to take a question from someone in the audience before we kind of go through another set of questions with our panelists. Is there anyone that has a question kind of based on what you've just heard a little bit about our panelists that you'd like us to think about together? Okay, sure. Do you want to pass yours down?
It can't be to your wife.
And if you could just say your name and
So
that'd be
I'm
great.
Tim Pastore. So my question to you is, what would you like your male counterparts to know? I mean, what's something that you wish as a fellow student, a fellow colleague, a husband, a partner, what is it that we can do, or what would it be that you would like to know, like for us to know about your particular situation?
Panelists who would like to comment?
I would personally say is, obviously the best partners are the ones that are going to be the most supportive of you. So that's, you know, if you're talking about your your boyfriend or your husband or your girlfriend, that you know, you want to have people around you that are going to support your continuous learning, and continue to, you know, help guide you through it. And so that I would just say that the support and encouragement.
You know, Flavia said she was thrilled to be one of the guys because then she was just an engineer. You know, through my career, what I always wanted to do is just be accepted as somebody on the team, not, okay, let's go guys and gals, you know. We just want to be part of the team.
Thank you, Tim, for that question. Thank you, panelists.
I was wondering if Senila is from a little bit different generation than the rest of us. Is there something different that you would expect from your students, and maybe when you get in the workplace? I would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I just think I don't really see a lot of the gender divide in my class specifically. I feel like, I mean, I'm not going to say there's an equal divide. Obviously, there's still lots of women that aren't involved in the sciences, but specifically at Boston University, I don't really see a lot of the gender divide. So.
That's excellent.
Encouraging, absolutely. Okay, well, let's continue along. So, Senila, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about, well, in high school, we know here you were very active in lots of kinds of activities. So now in Boston, at Boston University, or just in your next step of your life, kind of what are some other community activities, STEM-related, that you are able to participate in? You know, so can you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So as you guys know, I did mention earlier that I was a part of the Science Olympiad team. After I wasn't able to participate anymore because I was a high schooler, I obviously wasn't a middle schooler anymore, I actually went back and coached in high school, and I really loved it. I wanted to spread my enthusiasm for the program. I wanted to, you know, pass on my little tips and secrets that I had. And I loved it so much, I actually still go back to coach regularly, at least once a week. So I still continue with that. I also was just accepted into BU's Pre-Health Honor Society. And I haven't really started too much work with that, but from my understanding, they encourage a lot of volunteer work in specifically healthcare and public health, so I'm very excited to get started with that. They also pair us up. There's a mentor-mentee program through the society, so I'm very excited to get my mentor, who will likely be a current practicing physician, so that's great. I'm also, I'm a big believer in getting experience in what you want to do. So I knew I wanted to work in the hospital, but obviously it's difficult as somebody so young to get some hands-on clinical experience. So what I've been able to do is, for the past year or so, I've been volunteering over at the Children's Hospital through the Child Life Department. So I'm over on 10 Northwest, which is our orthopedic unit at the hospital. And basically my job is I'm not medically responsible for the patients, but I get to interact with lots of patients and families. I get to make them feel comfortable in the hospital, play some games, do some activities with them. And I think that's actually been very valuable for me, even though I do wish that I was more clinically and medically responsible for them. I think it's been a very good experience because a lot of people become desensitized in medicine, and I think a lot of doctors may not relate with their patients, and you know, seeing this side of patient care has really been beneficial to me because of that. I can see a patient as an actual person and not just, you know, a patient who I need to treat and I need to cure. And finally, I've actually gotten some actual clinical experience through Mass General Hospital. I'm a research intern at the Center for Addiction Medicine, and I'm basically responsible for screening our potential participants for some of the ongoing studies that we have going on. So that involves phone screenings and surveys with patients. And I've also actually gotten to assist with study doctors and the research assistants on physical study visits when the patients have come in. So I think just continuing my clinical experience and exposure to patient work has really been, and just work in science too with the Olympiad program has really been what I've continued to do in college as well.
Internships are an awesome way to get your foot in the door, to try on a new place or a new path. And I wondered if any of the other panelists had any experiences in internships that might have helped them move forward.
You know, it's very interesting you bring that up. I went to WPI, and at WPI, it's not like Northeastern, or at least it wasn't like Northeastern, where you do a lot of co-ops experience. All the people that go to Northeastern, they are forced to do a co-op experience. It is amazing the amount of work that they get before they even graduate. So when I was at WPI, Tim found out that there was a co-op program, and he started a co-op program, and I said, I want that. I want to graduate and have something under my belt. So I did work as a manufacturing engineer. My major was mechanical engineering with concentration in manufacturing. So I did work as a manufacturing engineer, and then later that summer, I also got a job at Gillette, and I also worked as that. And one thing I'll tell you, the younger kids out there, at iRobot, I can't think of a single person that I know that was hired recently, a young person out of college, that did not have a co-op experience. Whether the co-op experience or the internship was at iRobot or whether it was somewhere else. There is a lot of people applying for the jobs, and we always preference somebody that has had some experience. So what Senila said is very important. You can do some volunteer work. You're trying to get to understand what it's like in the field. And when I came back from my co-op, I think the same happened to Tim when he came back from his co-op. You see your classes a little bit different. You know, like we were a little bit older. We weren't taking so much calculus class anymore. I was very glad to never have used calculus in real day life. There are computers to do those for me. But you start thinking of like, how does this class gonna help me find a job later? And how does this apply to real life? So.
Thank you, Flavia.
One
Patty,
thing
yeah.
I'd like to say about Senila and give advice to the others is she seeks out her opportunities. So don't sit there and wait for them to come to you, right? Go and see what you can do and, you know, how you can get the experiences that you want.
Great advice. So Patty, so kind of picking up on that, you have that opportunity as a teacher. How do you support all the students and their voices in your classroom? What strategies do you use, you know, that you can share with us?
Well, one thing is the kids, my class is an elective, so they're coming there because they want to be there. So when I start out the year, I ask them why they're taking my class. And, you know, those reasons can change over the year as they find and explore more and more avenues of what they can do with what they're learning. Another thing I do is try to encourage them to explore on their own and come back and report back to the other students on what they found. Like I said in the beginning, computer science is such a vast field, and it touches every other field in STEM. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can find a job nowadays where you don't use a computer. How many people have not touched a computer today? Enough said. So just exploring what's out there, exploring how it grew today, and what do they think the technology is going to look like in the future. Just keeping them interested. One thing I say in my classrooms is Google is your best friend. You know, explore, use it to solve your problems, use it to dive a little deeper. If I'm not going deeper in an area, I want the students to go and report back to the rest of the class to learn from each other. The other thing I've done is I started an after-school program It's called Wakefield High School Tech Girls. I started that the first year I was teaching. I've expanded it, and I welcome boys too. We have a cybersecurity club because the kids were interested in that. Through the cybersecurity club, we solved a collegiate puzzle, and we were invited to Argonne National Lab to participate in a cyber defense competition. I got a call from the organizer, and I said, but my students are high school students. And she said, we want them to come. So what they did with they had a red team and a blue team. And the red team was supposed to break into the blue team's city. And then we were the pink team, and they taught us how to secure a system and how to try to break into a system. We also got a tour of the National Lab, and one of the students was a senior, and he says, I might change what I want to go to school for, because he saw more opportunities there than he ever knew were available to him. We were invited back again this year, and I hope to take a group of students again, and I hope to explore and find more and more of these opportunities to share with the students. I think it's really important.
I love hearing about the projects that they're working on as well. It's pretty unique, I think, to have you as passionate as you are and finding those opportunities with your students where you know they'll succeed as well. Flavia, can you tell us a little bit about a project that you're working on, kind of in your role in the project, and maybe it's something that you're currently doing, but I'm trying to get at, what is it like to work at iRobot?
All right, I'm going to answer that, but I can't answer on anything I'm working currently.
Oh,
I work
okay.
on new product development, but I have worked on many things that are out there today, so I'm just going to go back a couple of years if that's okay. A few years ago, iRobot decided that we wanted to do a telepresence robot. A telepresence robot that we partnered up with a company in California that works in the medical industry. They had this gigantic, ugly-looking, very much 1970s, 1980 robot already in the hospitals, but it was not used. It was very clunky, it was very difficult, and what the purpose of that robot was for a doctor to be able to consult with a patient in a time of emergency where the response time is very critical. So if you can imagine somebody in the middle of the woods goes to a hospital and they may be having a stroke. Have a stroke specialist from Mass General beam into this robot, have the nurse assist the doctor, and they can hear the person's heartbeat. They can do all the tests. But their robot wasn't nimble, it was clunky, it was hard to drive. The doctors were spending so much time just trying to figure out how to use this machine that they weren't using it. And it's a very expensive machine, and so hospitals weren't buying it. So they partnered up with iRobot, and we made the mobility base for the machine while they made the upper half. And there was a lot of really interesting challenges. As a systems engineer, you have to work with your customer. In this case, it was literally the customer, and a lot of the home robots place is working with somebody that represents the customer. But you have to work with your customer and understand what it is that they like to build. And so they give you this long list of things, and they said, the robot needs to be friendly, and the robot needs to be huggable. Now, if I go back to my engineering team, and I say, this robot needs to be friendly and huggable, they're going to laugh at me. They're not going to have a clue what it means for a robot to be friendly and huggable. So you need to take that and translate it into something that they can understand. Well, if you want to hug a robot, it kind of needs to be as tall as you are. If you want a robot to feel friendly, it can't be intimidating to the nurses. It has to kind of fit in a hospital environment. It can't look like something that doesn't belong in a hospital environment. So we started visiting many, many hospitals and taking pictures. And anytime, if any of you have boys, I'm pretty sure your boys have gotten stitches a few times. what mine has. So anytime I was in a hospital, I'm taking pictures. I had levels on my phone, and I'm trying to figure out the angle of the ramps on the phone. And it became this thing that like I needed to figure out, how am I going to translate these really high-level requirements into something that we can work on? And so some of the things that came out was the average nurse in the US is 5'4". Most of these robots are going to be sold in the US. Therefore, the robot should be 5 feet 4 inches. I don't want to have a 6-foot robot because it's going to be looking down on the nurse. You don't want to have a little bitty thing because it's not going to feel like a comfortable presence. It's going to feel like a toy is coming to examine you. You don't want to have it black and blue and all these weird colors. Everything in a hospital is white, so the color needs to be white. And so, and from there on, you keep defining the requirements. And then we found out it needs to be FDA approved. iRobot has never done anything that's FDA approved before. And so it was a big challenge. And Flavia likes challenge. So I said, all right, first thing I need to know is, what does it mean? And so I'm doing readings, and I'm hiring consultants, and I had all this stuff. And I remember one day I said to my team, I said, I found a consultant. He's going to come and train us on this. And it's going to be a week-long course. And they're like, we don't have time for that. And I said, well, do you want to develop this product or not? And so we had a week-long course, and then we figured out the things that we needed to know. And I got nominated for a Chairman Award that year because it was like where no one knew to even start. You had to be creative, and you had to think out of the box, and you had to like figure out. I bought every kind of hospital equipment to have in the lab, so we could make sure that we weren't interfering with the hospital equipment. It was very exciting.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens next.
It's RP Vita. They don't sell into a lot of quantity. It is a partnership with a company in California, but they do sell. If you Google it on the internet, there has been people that were talking about how it saved their lives. A stroke patient really has seconds between life and death, and having the right doctor beam into that robot and assess whether they need further treatment and what the treatment should be is very critical.
As you were describing your process, it reminded me of, barriers are what we see when we lose sight of our goals. And particularly in engineering, there may be a barrier, but then you're figuring out the next step, how to move beyond that barrier. Or if you get to one point and you can't go any further, then you restart and keep asking different questions. So that's what it reminded me of. Thank you. Katie, so we have 2 more questions here, 2 more kind of formal questions that you all were asking, so we're reiterating those. So what can parents do to inspire and engage their children and see themselves as scientists, artists, creators, makers? Just today I overheard 2 different conversations about from girls and professionals saying that when they were 6 and 7, they knew that they were excited about math. They were good at math. So 6 and 7 years old, wow, there's something going on there that's already happening in the environment of that young person, I think, even at that point. So do you have some suggestions?
Yeah, of course. If you want to have your children see themselves as scientists, makers, or creators, really the best advice I give is to make sure that you see them that way yourself. And that means meeting them where they are and respecting their interests. And that could mean looking at their interests in a new light. So if you're trying to pull your child away from something that really is engaging them, in telling them that you'd prefer that they do something more educational or more STEM related, then you're kind of passing along the message that their authentic self isn't a math and science kid. So what I prefer, what I'd suggest that you do with the, especially with the younger kids, is that you have to bring the creativity and the making and the STEM to their own interests. And this can just mean if they love dolls, then you have access to cardboard, glue, paper in the home. And that's basically a maker space. You basically set up a mini maker space in your own home, and then you let them kind of go and make whatever they want. So in my house, we have a lot of cardboard, and anyone who is working on the makerspace at the Galvin with me knows that I have this affinity for making things out of cardboard. So at my house, my kids have made computers out of cardboard, portrait studios out of cardboard, and my daughter very recently made a doll-size washer and dryer out of cardboard. And I love that, and that's my favorite kind of learning, even above classes and camps, because it's just organic. It just grew out of her own interests. So then the next step, if you are so inclined, is you can try to bring some more STEM into that kind of stuff. So I haven't even told Lily this, but I was thinking about this today. I was like, what if I suggested and saw if she wanted to get a little motor and kind of try to put a little working drum in the back of her washing machine? We can hook that up and do a little work with some circuitry. She might want to, she might not. I'd respect that. But that's a way to bring some STEM into that project that's all really her own. And if you like doing projects like that with your kids, that's great. If you're kind of thinking that's not really something that I have experience with, I'm not sure I want to do that, that's really where I'm hoping that the makerspace at the middle school and hopefully at all the other schools would come in. I would love that if I had kids coming into me and saying, this is what I'm doing at home, I really wish I knew how to add this to it. Could you help me? Let's see, classes and camps. So many of you have probably heard of Einstein's Workshop. That's one of my favorite places for classes and camps. I did a story on them a few years ago. They're so nice. They're so into getting girls into their different courses there. If you ever wish that they had something that they don't, I'm pretty sure if you email them, they would love to hear from you. I do have one cautionary tale about classes and camps. I talked to someone once. I was interviewing her for the book, and she mentioned that she had a 10-year-old who loved architecture. So the mom and the dad signed her up for a week-long architecture camp. And at the end of the week, the young girl no longer liked architecture. And so they tried to figure out what had happened. And it turned out she was the only girl at the camp. And this mattered to her. And so she decided she didn't want to go into continuing this love of architecture if there were no other girls. So this might matter to some girls and it might not matter to others. There might be other things that could affect whether a girl has a good experience at a camp. It could be what they serve for lunch. You don't really know. So before you sign your kids up for a class or camp, I'd probably just recommend that you kind of find out as much as you can about it and make sure that you do really think that it's a good fit for your daughter. Maybe find friends to go with her. Make sure that it's something that you do think she will enjoy. I also recommend that you go for breadth over depth. So look for classes and camps that hit a lot of different areas, not just one. That can help a lot as well. And I think finally I'd say that kind of have the adage that no experience is better than a bad experience.
Thank you. And I would also just add, kind of try to stick with it. Try it on and be open, and by the end of it you might have this awesome feeling or nope, yep, did that, I'm ready for the next thing, and that's okay too, because it's all about learning and having new experiences. Sarah,
Can I
you've
just say one little thing on the camp?
Yes.
So
I'm also the timekeeper here.
Oh, I'm
so
sorry.
We're doing
I'll
great.
try to be quick.
Go ahead.
And I'll have to do this very quick before he returns to the room. My son went to a camp once, and he didn't like it. And it was a camp at an Einstein workshop, and he's a boy, and they were building doll houses, but I didn't know they were building doll houses, but I signed him up to build doll houses. So it was total the reverse. But one thing that we did was, okay, well, but you have to go to camp. I don't have any other choice. So how are we going to make this fun? So we just created a goal. I said, make the prettiest dollhouse you have. And then in the weekend, we're going to take a BB gun and we're going to shoot it. And if you can shoot those little bucks and the little iPhones, you're going to have fun. So something that was not going so well, we turned it around. So don't wait until, girls and Nicole, don't tell him that story, please. But take something that is not so much fun and turn it around. Don't wait till the end of the camp to find out that they're not enjoying, like if they're struggling, they're the only girl, well, what can we do to help you?
Sure, doing something that seems hard or difficult or uncomfortable is actually a great learning experience. So with support from others, it hopefully will get you through. Sarah?
Oh, I was just going to say that I love the advice. I mean, you got to figure out what your kids' deal breakers are, right? And, being the only girl was a deal breaker for that particular child. So I'll take that away from this experience, so thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to just wrap up with thinking about or sharing some ways that you know about women in STEM who are helping in our kind of local or any global communities? I know that you're very active and supportive in Boys and Girls Club initiatives.
Yes.
We'd love to learn more.
So sure, I'm active in a couple different areas. One is the Boston Women's Group, which is a group supported by women that elevate women into leadership roles. So that's a group, and I think there's all sorts of levels and groups of women that gather to support each other in any types of industries. So there's industry-specific or general women's groups that I would encourage young women to get involved in. I've also been pretty involved in the Boys and Girls Club. Most recently, I was part of my position was around corporate and social responsibility. So making connections with our community and giving back to our community. And so I developed a really wonderful relationship with the Boys and Girls Club here in Wakefield, which has really opened up a lot of opportunities for the organizations that I've worked for to help sponsor and support the Boys and Girls Club. And some of that has come in the way of financial funding for the Boys and Girls Club. We recently gave $150,000 when I was with Epsilon less than 3 or 4 months ago. So that was kind of a great way to give back. And then recently with Shire, we had a STEM day with the Boys and Girls Club in Stoneham, and that was a great day. We had 77 employees go down to the Boys and Girls Club, of which the 77, about half of them were women, all Shire employees that have mostly science, technology, and engineering backgrounds, went to the STEM day and spent the afternoon with the children and did lots of activities, whether it was taking a balloon, rubbing the balloon on their hair, and then forcing by weight of the electricity from their hair a empty soda can down the hallway, which was kind of a neat activity. Building motors, building light bulbs. It was such a great day. I spent the day with the 5-year-olds, which was probably my STEM level of knowledge. Making arts and crafts, which I really enjoyed. But the opportunity that I have being in an HR field, even though being in a pharmaceutical industry and being surrounded by scientists, is how do I figure out making that connection with the organization, the people, and engaging them with the community outside. So that's been an opportunity that I've had.
And would anyone else like to add anything there? About our local involvement in STEM? Yes? No? Okay. All right. Okay, well, our panelists have been doing a phenomenal job in the hot seats here. So before I ask them to share a final thought, is there a question that someone would like to ask? Yes, all the way in the back.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here, panelists. My name is Simbal Shazadi, and I am a student at UMass Boston. And as a student, I'm involved with I mentor younger girls. And my question for you today is sort of, how do you support girls who are interested in STEM, but their family may not have the resources to involve them in these classes or in these week-long camps? They may not have the resources, or their lower income families. How do you sort of build that encouragement within these girls who don't have the resources to do what some other families might have the resources to do?
Well, one thing I've done is offer the Tri-Tech Club, I call it, after school, so that people can come and explore, you know, some of the computer science, cybersecurity. And I also offer gaming. And you know what? If you study how a game works, okay, you can learn a lot about how to write algorithms and stuff. But anything a student would come to me with of interest, if it related to STEM, I would, after school, during that time, explore it with them.
I have a couple ideas. One of the things we're auctioning tonight, we did not auctioning, raffling, sorry. One of the things we're raffling tonight is a tour of the iRobot Museum. So some things don't cost money, right? Of course, you would have to win that to get the tour. But there are other things like that. You can visit a makerspace. It might not have a very expensive entry fee. There's a place in, is it Arlington, Tim? The what? Somerville, Artisan Asylum. They had, earlier in the spring, they had a robot war. And it cost nothing. It was a donation if you wanted to donate. And I brought $5 and the woman didn't know what to do with it. It was open to the public and they had these robots like competing. So there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet. You should Google and try and find out something that is local to the children. There's also a lot of really interesting videos and a lot of things that don't cost money. You mentioned cardboard, like things with balloons. There's a lot of exercises that, and I don't know how young the girls are, but, or the boys for whatever age are. But there's a lot of stuff on YouTube that is kind of exciting.
And I would just add, and Sarah also wants to add, a lot of organizations do offer tuition assistance or scholarships for programs. So always encourage that young person or that family or individual to ask if there's any support. And I think that might be helpful as well.
I'd also like to add that in putting together the resource page, which is on the website, on the back of the speaker page, there we discovered a lot of free kind of interesting activities, so that there were free public lectures at the aquarium weekly. There are like Saturdays where either the first Saturday of the month or every Saturday where kids can go to MIT Lincoln Labs or to the MIT Museum and do hands-on science if they sign up for it. That's free. Like, there's actually a lot, especially in this area, that is available to people if they go and look for it.
And right here in Wakefield, we will be hosting a STEAM extravaganza in March. And so we'll be getting that word out. It's an opportunity for community members to participate. The planning has only just started, sort of, but we'll be reaching out. And if you are interested, perhaps you can let us know that as well. But we're working with our school district colleagues and teachers and community members to really have a lot of fun and bring out some really cool stuff and activities.
Can I?
Yes, Patty.
You said you were from UMass Boston, right? You know, Senilia's done a great job with finding opportunities for herself to learn STEM, right? There's volunteer opportunities for these college kids would be great if you can get them into different STEM programs through volunteering.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion as well. I know in the museum we have volunteers, and again in lots of other organizations also. And again, it's a great way to get your foot in the door, learn a little bit about what it's like to work in a particular place. And I also recognize that sometimes for volunteering, people still need to have a paid position as well. So sometimes one will lead to the other. And sometimes you gotta juggle, you know, the pros and cons of being able to be a volunteer as well as the other needs that you might have. Sarah?
I would just add, so at UMass Boston, I'm sure there's a career center, resource center, and I'm sure there's a great alumni connection. And there's probably plenty of people in that alumni connection that would probably love to be a mentor or allow a college student to shadow them in a day, in a life, in their job. And that's always free. It's just, you know, again, going back to the points that I think everybody's made here, which is you've got to create those opportunities. And I think you're doing a fabulous job of being a mentor. And I think if you can help guide them and encourage them to kind of go and take that lead on their own, I think the resources are there, and those types of resources and experiences are free and probably worth more than even the ones we pay for.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, we have a couple of final items here to address. One is one final question for the panelists, and then we'll be having a drawing of our raffle, and I think we have some cookies maybe still to eat. Thank you, Boys and Girls Club, for supplying that. So panelists, just one last thing to think about here with us. So what's one thing maybe you're most proud of your work, or in 5 years you hope that you are involved in, something? And finally, if you can think of one word of advice that you want to leave all of us members of the audience regarding how to be successful in a STEM career. That's what we'd love to hear from you right now. And we can go in any order. How's that?
I'll start with be curious. Never stop learning, never stop questioning. Asking questions is never, don't ever think that it's dumb to ask a question. It just means you're inquisitive and you're listening and you care. So I'd say that's my advice.
To follow on that.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. No, you go. All right, we'll go.
Just kind of to follow on that, I think that everyone should build a team around themselves. You want to build a team of people who have strengths that are a little bit different than yours. So we're all good at lots of different things. Think about what it is that you're really, really great at, and surround yourself with other people who are really great at things that are different than you. I guess that's it.
Yeah, she said what I was going to say, right? I was going to say,
together, right?
No, right? And as I'm listening to everybody on this panel, it's like, wow, they have the same experience I do. So what she said is surround yourself by people with all different talents and stuff. And what I was going to say is value your network. The people you know are going to get you the opportunities you want. So, go out and seek those people that you can learn from, or you can mentor yourself, and hold on to them fast and tight, because in the future they're going to be there to help you out.
Don't be afraid of making mistakes. It doesn't matter what career you choose, STEM or otherwise. You will make mistakes. Little mistakes, medium mistakes, gigantic mistakes. Get used to it. That's the piece of advice.
I think my one piece of advice would probably be don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. You're going to hit a lot of challenges. You're going to hit a lot of rocks as you're going through your career. And I mean, everybody's not going to have the same path. It's going to be different for everybody. Everybody's going to have different challenges, but just keep going. If you know you want to do it, you can do it.
All right, well, let's give a round of applause for our panelists here. I'm hoping for our audience that you have maybe thought about some of the things we asked early on as far as reflecting on your own experiences of how do you feel about STEM? What are some activities that you are already doing or would like to be doing in the future? Maybe you've heard some ideas here from our panelists around that to add to your confidence as a STEM learner, your identity as a STEM learner, a successful learner in whatever it is that you set your mind toward. You can do it, and speaking of that, we have to just also then just wrap up and thank you to our sponsors, our Boys and Girls Club, and thank you to our partnership, our parent partnership group. Our thank you to our AV folks here and the support of the school in hosting us here. And Sarah has something else.
Yeah, I was also going to add, please look at our website. There's a STEM opportunities page, which we have developed, but it is a work in progress. And we have a place where you can add your own ideas if you have additional ideas that you think of. And I'll get an email, and then we can add it to the website. So it is a work in progress, and we think that everyone's ideas are important, so we'd appreciate, having your input as well.